students. Today we're going to tackle the issue of present perfect. I've heard many times students tell me, hey, can't you just use past simple? Do you have to use present perfect in place of past simple? Well, first of all, one thing you have to remember, there are a lot of grammatical tenses in the English language. And each grammatical tense is responsible for a certain niche, for a certain thing. And these things don't usually overlap. So using the present continuous tense, you cannot use the past perfect instead or anything. So each grammatical tense is responsible for a certain niche. And the same thing is about the present perfect and the past simple tenses. Okay? Now, let us start with a quick question right here. Let us start with some questions. We're going to do a little bit of speaking with you. My question is, when was the last time you went to a movie theater? What movie did you watch? Why did you go to the movie theater to watch that movie? And now pay attention. How many times have you seen this movie? Interesting, right? So the first three questions were about your past experience, and I was referring to a specific time in the past. I was wondering about some details about the time when you went to see a movie in the movie theater. So I cared more about the movie itself, about the settings, the arrangements, the details and everything. And then I'm asking a question, how many times have you seen this movie? And let's imagine we're talking about Titanic. And you tell me, I have seen Titanic at least 10 times. Well, probably in American English, you could say, I saw Titanic 10 times in my life. But it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. So our sentence that we're going to work with sounds like this. I have seen Titanic at least 10 times. All right? Now, looking at this sentence, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and we're going to build the foundation for this grammatical tense, the present perfect. So, I have seen Titanic at least 10 times. Now, when I say this sentence, am I asking you about the past? I have seen Titanic at least 10 times, of course. So the first brick into our foundation is going to be the past. We are talking about the past. Now, you might ask me, well, the past simple is about the past too. You're correct. This is why we need to ask the second question. I have seen Titanic at least 10 times. If I ask you to look at the timeline in the past, where are you going to put that action? When did that happen? Did it happen 2 years ago, 10 years ago, yesterday? Did it happen when? The problem is that we do not care about this. We don't care when it happened. We just say, I've seen Titanic at least 10 times in my life. You maybe saw Titanic for the first time when you were 7 years old or something, and then every year you watched that movie, and now you've seen it at least 10 times or something. So the idea is that the first brick is the past, and the second brick is no time indication. We don't care, we don't focus on when exactly something happened. Okay? So the first brick is the past, just like the past simple, but then we don't care about when it happened. Now, we need one more brick here because our foundation is built on three important bricks. So I've seen Titanic at least 10 times. Now, if we don't care about when, what is it that we care about? Exactly. We care about the fact that you have seen that movie at least 10 times. So we just care about the fact that you've seen it. yes, now you can tell me about it. You can tell me about each of the characters and all this stuff. But rather than caring about when, we care about the fact. So the third brick is going to be fact. So whenever you use the present perfect tense and they or those sentences that you use, they match these three bricks, then this is the good reason to use the present perfect tense. Let's think about any other sentence just out of the blue. For instance, I've traveled to Africa. Mhm. Am I speaking about the past? Yes. Do I give you any details, like how and why and when? No. I only care about the fact that I've traveled to Africa, just the fact. And again, I don't give you any details, no time indication. I've traveled to Africa. I've had a lot of experiences there, you know. I can share about these experiences with you a lot, but it doesn't matter. What matters is just the fact. So, looking at these three bricks past, fact, no time indication, let's think of another sentence. For instance, I've said before, I've traveled to Africa. What if I say, I traveled to Africa last year? Hmm, is it about the past? Perfect. It's the indicator of the past tense. Yes, so past. But here, one of the bricks is different. This time, I'm giving you some details when I went there. So I went to Africa last year. So last year, that's our brick that used to be no time indication. Now we focus on the time. This is what matters to us. So I traveled to Africa last year. So anytime you speak about any kinds of details, any sort of things that you shift your focus to, something that matters, it's probably the moment when you have to use past simple over the present perfect. So I usually call the present perfect an introductory tense. You kind of introduce a certain topic, like you sit there with your friends having coffee together and now you want to impress them and you say, hey, you know what? I've been to the States like 10 times. And they're like, oh, really? When did you go last time? Well, it was like last year. I visited 3 states and I stayed with my friends. So now you are in the context of that one trip that you took at a specific time. So you can forget about the present perfect. So a quick recap, 3 bricks we need. Are we talking about the past? Yes. Do we care just about the fact that something happened? No details, right. And then we don't give any time indication. This is something that just doesn't matter at all. All right. So now the next part of our lesson, we're going to look at the details of different present perfects, like all these instances. Okay. So we've already mentioned one. I've traveled to Africa or I've seen this movie at least 10 times. Now, whenever you are using the present perfect, there's always a correlation between the past and the present. Something happened in the past, but the result is in the present. I know it sounds a little too philosophical because if you say that, Napoleon started a war, you're not going to use present perfect tense because Napoleon is already dead. Like you might tell me, well, the result is obvious today. We still no. I'm talking about something that is real. So, like especially if the person is alive, this is when it's going to work. For instance, if I say I've traveled to Africa at least 10 times, what does that mean? I've been there. Doesn't matter when. I've been there before. I've talked to people. I've tasted their food and all this. I'm still alive. I might go again, but I have a lot of experience. Now I can tell you all the details about Africa. anything you want to know. I'll let you know. So, whenever I speak about my experiences, I use the present perfect. And again, when you ask a question, have you ever, that's a very common question, have you ever tried rope jumping? Have you ever tried this food or anything? So you ask about experience, and the person says, yes, I have. Last time I did it was 2 years ago. You already focus on the time when exactly it happened. So you move to past simple. Okay. So whenever you talk about your experiences, now the next point is when you talk about certain changes that took place, something that is pretty fresh still, right? For example, there is a very old, funny joke. It's like a child is riding a bicycle and he yells at his mom. He says, Mom, look, no hands. He rides around the corner. You can hear him fall. He gets out and says, Mom, look, no teeth. Yes. So that thing just happened. The mother heard that her son fell off the bike and he hurt himself. And he would just report to his mom, I've broken my tooth. I've broken my tooth just now. And so we kind of understand that this is a fresh thing that just happened very, very recently. Yes. Or when you read the news, like the new information that you get, you read something like the Prime Minister of England has resigned. So this decision has just been made. It's still new. There's no details. We only focus on the fact. But whenever you present some new information, when you brag about something, either your experience or something that just happened, like, look, I bought a new car. And I was like, whoa, really? And then they ask you when, what kind of car, how did you get it? And la, 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 la. They ask you about the details, so they use the past simple. Okay. So those are two main reasons to use the present perfect when you talk about new experiences or when you talk about something new, something that just happened very, very recently. Now let's practice. So the first exercise is this. We're going to see 3 short dialogues. We're going to use our knowledge and our logic. I will help you with the first dialogue, and then I will give you some time to finish the second 2 dialogues. So the task here is this. You have to complete these dialogues with the present perfect or past simple. So let's think about these 3 bricks. Let's keep them in our minds, right? So let's take a look at the first dialogue. We have 2 people speaking here. Now, something about an interesting conversation with a kid, okay? So the question is about the experience. Have you ever had an interesting conversation with a kid? Yes. What did you learn? Because now you're going into detail. So, and you refer to a specific time in the past. So when you had that conversation, okay, we have the time marker already. It's hidden, but it's there. What did you learn? Okay. And then the person goes, well, just the other day, I asked my son, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he simply said, happy. Isn't that what really matters in life? Okay? A very simple thing. So the first question is about an overall experience. Have you ever had this experience? The person agrees, says yes, and then he gives you some details about that specific experience in the past. So the past simple is necessary here. Now let's take a look at B and C. So the idea is probably the same. Let's take a look. So find it hard to start a conversation. Oh, lots of times. This morning, for example, when I got on the bus, and then he tells us about what happened that morning when he got on the bus. So let's think. Yes, and oh, and la la la. So, of course, the starter, the conversation starter, the icebreaker could be used in present perfect. Have you ever found it hard to start a conversation? Oh, yes, lots of times. And now he tells you that this morning, when I got on the bus, I sat next to this lady who kept smiling and looking at me. I didn't know what to say. What did you do? Again, referring to that situation in the morning. Oh, I just said something about the weather and then started using my phone. Okay? You start a conversation with the help of the present perfect. And let's look at C. Now you probably know the logic here. Let's take a look. Right? Have you ever felt too old to do something? Every morning. Not that I remember. How about you? Oh, many times. For example, 2 years ago, specific time, that's what matters most here. When I started taking French classes, I was very worried at first. I thought learning a language was only for younger people. All right, so now it brings us to an interesting conclusion. You can use the present perfect as a conversation starter, as an icebreaker. One of those have you ever questions can always break some ice, and you can start that conversation with that girl that you've always liked, and so on. Okay? All right, now let's take a look at another exercise here, and this time you're also going to see a dialogue, but it's going to be a little bit confused, right? So you need to put it back in order. So take a quick look. There is a man and a woman speaking. I will give you a few minutes. You can pause the video. You can look through this dialogue and try to put everything in the right order. You look at the grammatical tenses there that we will discuss afterwards. So take a moment, look at this dialogue, and fix it. Now we're back. And let's read this dialogue again. A woman and a man are just sitting on the bench in the park talking. A woman says, "Oh, nice day, isn't it?" What does the man say in return? "Yeah, it is beautiful. Have you been to this park before?" He's starting to use this pickup lines or icebreakers. Have you ever been to this park before? And she says, "Yes, I was here last Saturday. How about you?" So she jumps to past simple because she speaks of Saturday, specific time. And he responds, "Oh, me too. I came early in the morning and sat right here to read the paper." In her turn, she says, "Oh, I didn't see you. Maybe because I spent the morning by the lake. Have you seen it yet?" Look, so they're talking about that specific time of the day when they were both in the park, but they didn't see each other. So there is this time reference they're using. Then she talks about the lake, and she's wondering, like, if he has the experience, have you seen it yet? And he responds, "Oh, I haven't, but I've heard it's really nice. Did you like it?" Now, that's an important thing. You can say, "I heard," when did you hear that? "I've heard," because we don't know when, but there's been rumors. I've heard that it's really nice. By the way, it's the same with that question, what happened? It's actually not what happened, but what's happened, because we don't know when. We can just see the result. The person has been crying. So what's happened? What has happened, not what happened. If we just see the person and see the result. All right, let's move back to our dialogue. "I've heard it's really nice. Did you like it?" And she responds, "Oh, I did. I had a nice walk and then sat on the grass to enjoy the view. You should check out the lake." And he says, "I should definitely. I haven't walked around the park much." You see, so again, he's talking about the absence of experience. And she continues, "I see. But there is so much to see and do around here. By the way, have you ever been to the little cafe near the park entrance? Have you tried their coffee? I was there 10 minutes ago and bought this coffee. Isn't it the best?" Or "it's the best," sorry. And then he responds, "Oh, I have. I bought a cappuccino there last Saturday morning. I really liked it." Good conversation starters. So you see, what we're doing here, we're juggling past experiences, facts, when we don't really care about when it happened, we just care about the fact itself, compared to certain details, the time specifically, right? So if there is something about the time where you refer to a certain event in the past, you use the past simple tense instead of the present perfect. Okay? Really good. Really good. Okay. And one last exercise for you. So we're going to try some conversation starters. So imagine a situation, it's you and some person next to you, and you really want to start a conversation. You don't know what to say or how to approach them. So let's try to use the present perfect. I'm going to give you a topic to talk about, and you think of a question. Then I give you my idea that I have in my mind. So, how about you start with a question about traveling using the present perfect tense? Any ideas? All right. My idea, you can pause for a second to think and then try yours. But my idea is this. For instance, oh, have you been to the US before? Let's say we are flying to the United States, and I'm just wondering, so have you been to the US before, for example? All right. Another topic, films. Pause for a second. Think about a question in the present perfect tense to break the ice. Okay. Now, my question is this: have you seen any of the films from this season yet? Anything new? Can you recommend anything? Yeah, that's the key here. All right. Another little question about books and reading. You're riding on the bus with someone, you see that person is reading or whatever. You like reading. All right. So, my question would be have you ever joined a book club, or have you ever thought about joining a book club? It's a good starter. Then sports. What about sports? Any thoughts about sports? I'm keen on sports, so I can have a lot of questions about sports. And you can say something. Have you ever tried any extreme sports? Have you ever done golfing? I have once. And then music. What could be a good conversation starter for music? Have you ever been to a live concert? There you go. So you see, when you know the present tense, the present perfect tense, yes, excuse me, you can use it as a conversation starter. And maybe that was the piece that was lacking in your equation, and now you can make more friends speaking English without being awkward. Okay? So I hope you have a clear understanding of the present perfect tense, and we try to compare it with the past simple. And again, the recap: 3 bricks in the foundation: the past, the fact, we don't care about any details, it's just the fact something did happen, and then there is no time indication. This is not the focus of our conversation. So I've seen Titanic many times. I don't care when, in which settings, and everything. Just the fact that I've seen it, and now I can tell you everything about Titanic. By the way, I've never seen Titanic in my life. Maybe I shouldn't be proud of that. So, I hope to see you in my next classes. Have a great day.